Hello again, I am Blunty, and with the impending launch of the line of Steam machines, Valve's push to bring PC gaming closer to the simplified, more consumer-friendly experience of console gaming, I've been reaching out to a few of the companies launching Steam machines to see if I can get some review units to check out. But I also got curious as to how close in price and power I could match these pre-built machines with by putting together my own custom DIY PC builds. So in this quick little two-part series, I'm going to show you two examples of Steam machine clones that I've come up with, both based on the more console-like bespoke engineered options on offer, instead of the other ones that are pretty much just off-the-shelf builds with a brand slapped on and called a Steam machine. And I'm going to do it twice. I'm going to do one ultra-budget build and one more premium enthusiast-level build. First up here in part 1, we'll start with the affordable option, priced at that desirable and internet argument starting console killer range. The Alienware Steam Machine. The cheapest option among the three variants is a console competitive price of $450 US smackers. And all the prices I mention here in these videos, by the way, will be in American currency, as many of these machines don't even have Australian release dates yet, let alone Australian pricing. And yes, $450. That means even the cheapest Steam machine is more expensive than the most popular console, the PS4. But that's an argument for another time. Let's just focus on the rig for now. The base model Alienware Steam machine has a 4th generation Intel i3 CPU, 4 gigs of RAM, a 500GB 7200 RPM hard drive, and a slightly custom GPU chipset from Nvidia that, frustratingly, neither Alienware or Nvidia have quite been perfectly clear about exactly what the bloody hell it is. But it is said to be very close to an 860M with 2GB of memory. So, with those base stats in mind, using Newegg to bring it all together, my Alienware clone looks like this. A Core i3 4170 for the CPU, virtually identical to the slightly slower 4170T variant in the Alienware rig for $125. We'll stick with the stock Intel heatsink and fan, as there's no real need for anything aftermarket here. An MSI H81M-P33 Micro ATX motherboard will get the job done here. Not something I'd usually select for a gaming build, but it will do everything we need from it, and the price is right at just $45. A pair of 2GB G-Skill Ripjaws DDR3 1600 RAM sticks at $28 gives us the 4GB of total RAM we're after. There are some slightly cheaper options out there to save $1 or $3, but for a rig like this, I'd rather stick with a brand that has a solid rep, particularly in gaming builds. For the hard drive, we can save a tenner or so by going for a 3.5-inch desktop drive instead of the 2.5-inch laptop jobby that Alienware use because of space concerns in their little rig, and seeing as we're going to be building in a more standard PC case, that's not really an issue for us. Again, there are slightly cheaper ways to go, but for me, Western Digital is a brand that has never let me down, so a 500GB 7200 RPM Blue is the way to go. $47 after a $13 instant rebate at the time I'm plugging all this in. The case we're slapping all this in is a rather, well, it's a little bit ugly, isn't it? Fellow from Apiva called the X-Trooper Jr., which is just an hilarious name on its own. But it's here because it's small enough to be relatively unobtrusive under the TV, it seems like it has decent airflow, and above all, is nice and cheap. Just $50 gets the case and a basic 450 watt power supply, which saves us some cash and will be perfectly adequate for this system. And lastly, of course, the final component, the GPU. I chose an Asus GTX 750 Ti at $139. The 750 Ti is around about equivalent to the 860M that the GPU in the Alienware is said to be closely related to. In fact, the 750 Ti is slightly faster, and while the 2GB of GDDR5 video memory both the Alienware's GPU and the 750 Ti have will be an increasing concern as more and more higher-end games start asking for 4GB of playground to feel happy, there is still a useful life left in the 750 Ti, and seeing as we're building a custom PC, it'll be the work of minutes to swap it out for something gruntier should the need ever arise, or your budget can accommodate. But that's the basic build, and that brings our total cost of parts to just $435, sneaking just under the cost of the Alienware machine. And we don't have to factor the operating system into the cost here as we would with a Windows machine, because SteamOS is free. However, the Alienware machine does come with the Steam controller, so that is an extra $50 on top right there. So if you do want to go with Steam's quirky controller, that is an extra $50 on top right there. Also missing from the functionality of my clone is the Bluetooth and Wi-Fi the Alienware has built in. So if you do need that, instead of the Ethernet connection that comes on the motherboard I chose, there's a small extra cost there too for perhaps a couple of little cheap USB dongles to get that job done. Plus, the Alienware is undoubtedly a nicer looking thing to have stuck under the TV, but then my clone is easier to upgrade. So that's where the balance point is. I don't think it's fair to say both machines have their pros and cons, back and forths in one way or the other, all that kind of stuff. And you're free to argue about that in the comment section, so long as you keep things civil. But I feel like I got pretty damn close to matching the specs of Alienware's machine at an equivalent pricing and letting you have a clearer upgrade path. But yeah, like I said, it's not nearly as sexy or as simple or as elegant as Alienware's machine. So anyway, in part 2, I'm going to be looking at the other end of the spectrum. I'm going to be building a clone of one of the more premium, higher end Steam machines. So stay tuned for that. But meanwhile, thanks for watching. I am Blunty, and I will catch you next time.